Hey, Kanai here once again, man. Just want to share a few words of encouragement and insight. Hopefully, it helps you to get you on your journey or help you to realize that you're actually just stuck in traffic. Now, today I just want to talk about guilt. And it was an experience that I was actually thinking about, and I just wanted to share my experience, and hopefully, that experience might help someone or help to shed light in someone else's situation that might be similar. Now, it's concerning guilt. And guilt is something that can be very hard, weighty on your heart and on your spirit to deal with, especially in different circumstances. Now, you have many form of guilt. You have that guilt of survivor's guilt, where you might have been in a car accident and you happen to be the only one that survived, and you would start to develop some level of depression or some level of anguish because you happen to be the only one, and blame yourself for actually being the only survivor. Then you have another form that I was suffering from in some for a brief moment, and this happened when actually my mom, she was very ill, and before she passed, she was in ICU, and I went in there to visit her after not seeing her for a few days, and she was laying there, had tubes hooked up all up and down her body, thing hanging out of her mouth, catheter, I think they call it, hanging out of her mouth and stuff for helping her breathe. And I never saw my mother in that condition before, and me being the only son that she had, I would always able to cheer up, even if she's upset or mad at me or whatever. I would always able to do something to try to cheer up and make her laugh and put a smile back on her face. And being there, her being unconscious, not knowing that I'm there, or could, try to indicate that she knows that I'm there or anything of that sort. I stood there looking at her, feeling helpless, literally helpless in that moment, and not being able to do anything, not be able to call upon anybody, not be able to pay any amount of money or do anything. I prayed, and I asked God, to help the situation. But, as we see the end result, that His will was done and she's no longer with us. But in that moment, I had to come to terms with what is it that I was looking at and what is it that I had to deal with in that moment. And I felt bad because I felt like there was something else maybe I could have done, and I started to feel guilty, like, maybe, had I not convinced her, because she had to take the surgery. Just rewind for a little bit. She had to take the surgery, but she was afraid. She didn't really want to do it. And I convinced her that it would be in all of our best interests that, she take the surgery, because it was one of those situations where, had she not done it, she could have just been walking up the stairs and just basically collapsed and died. So the doctor suggests that, it was best that, she was able to do the surgery. So no one could talk her into doing it. And of course, I was called in, and I was able to shed light on it, and she agreed. So now here it is. She agreed because I want to assume because of my persuasion, and now she's laying here and not quite sure if it's going to go one way or the other. And just imagine what I'm going through as a result of that, of talking my mother into performing a surgery that she wasn't, too gun-ho to do. And I'm standing there and I'm watching and I'm praying, I'm asking the Lord, to reverse this, help her to come through and, make this situation better. And to no avail, there was no response, things didn't get any better. And the next day I went to go see her, and I had to make my peace in a sense. I apologized. I let her know that I was sorry, and at this point, it basically, it was all left to her to decide how she's going to fight or try to get through this. And I made my peace and asked her, well, if this is something that you want to do, if you don't want to live in this condition, because the recovery process, had she survived and gotten out of ICU, would have been a little, very hard. You know, she would have had to be hospitalized for a little while, and my mom's, being a very independent woman, would not want anyone to be waiting on her hand and foot. And that also might have, led to her feeling even worse about the situation, or having to force us to have to take care of her in that condition. So it was kind of like, a catch-22 either way. But, feeling bad and feeling guilty for what has happened on the circumstances now that I have to deal with, was very troubling for me. So I had to come to a point of acceptance. And my point of acceptance was accepting that the will of God will be done in this situation. And I told her that, if she decides that she no longer wants to fight and wants to go home to the Lord, that I was okay with it. And I know you're probably thinking, man, well, how could you say that? That's your mom's and so forth. But, it's one of them situations to where you have to come to terms, or come to a point of acceptance of things. And when we don't want to come to a point of acceptance, this is what makes things even more complicated. And because we don't want to come to a point of acceptance doesn't guarantee that the circumstances will change. But here it is. It was a personal conversation that I have to have, and I guess you guys are the ones now that I'm sharing this with. And in so doing, it helped to alleviate that burden that I felt in my heart, like I was the one that actually put my mom's in this situation, and that was something that started to weigh on me heavily. And in so making my peace with her while she was still alive in the ICU, I felt that burden was alleviated from my heart. It was as if, that conversation went across in a way that she allowed me to feel okay about the circumstances, and it wasn't my fault. Now, this might not be an opportunity or a conclusion that many people that's suffering from this similar form of guilt might come to or resolve, but you have to find a way and a perspective and where to put things so that you can move on. Because there's nothing you can presently or physically do in most cases to change the circumstances, because could you have done so, you would have done it and you probably wouldn't have felt guilty about it. But the Lord sometimes put us in situation to where either which way it goes, we won't be able to change it. And we have to come to that point of acceptance and be patient and allow Him to work us through that situation. So, I hope that this helped. And I hope this testimony would, help to give closure to someone or help them to get to a point of acceptance, and just allow God to work and continue to work in your life. Because the Lord says that those that are weary and heavy laden, He says, come unto me and I shall give you rest. So we have to come unto the Lord and we have to lay those burdens at His feet and leave it there. We cannot bring burdens to the Lord and then we leave it and then we pick it right back up the next day by starting to worry about it, about those circumstances we cannot change. So in order to overcome guilt, put things into perspective, have a conversation with that individual, or, even if you have to go, if it's the case where someone died, go to the gravesite and make your peace with them. Go to the hospital if they're still alive or in a coma or whatever the situation is, and have that conversation with them. Have a conversation with the family members of the surviving party, or whatever it is that it might take, to bring about, some level of closure for you. All right, so I hope this helped, and talk to you guys soon. Shalom.